Some men discover betrayal through lipstick on a collar or a receipt in a pocket. I discovered mine through my wife's laughter, crystal clear on speakerphone, echoing off the marble countertops I'd installed with my own hands. The words that followed that laughter carved themselves into my memory the way a chisel marks stone. My husband's stupid. He'll never figure it out. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Marcus Webb, 42 years old, and I make my living as a stonemason in Portland, Oregon. For 2 decades I've shaped granite and limestone into kitchen islands, fireplace mantles, and garden walls that outlive the marriages they witness. There's an honesty in stone. It doesn't pretend to be something it isn't. A crack is a crack. A flaw shows itself in the light. I wish people worked the same way. That Thursday afternoon in late September, I'd left a job site early because the supplier had sent the wrong slabs. Calacatta instead of Carrara. When you work with stone, details matter. A 1/4 inch off and the whole installation fails. I'd learned that lesson the hard way when I was 23 and cocky. Now I double-check everything. Except apparently my marriage. The house sat quiet when I pulled into the driveway at 3 in the afternoon. My truck made its usual diesel rumble, loud enough that anyone home would hear me coming. But I'd parked on the street because I was heading back out to meet the supplier. The walk up the driveway felt different that day, though I couldn't name why. The Japanese maple we'd planted for our 10th anniversary had started turning red early. The flagstone path I'd laid 5 years back showed moss in the joints that needed cleaning. Small things a man notices when he's built them. I pushed through the side door into the mudroom, the one that leads straight to the kitchen. My boots were still on because I was just grabbing my invoice folder from the office. The door closed behind me with a soft click, muffled by the weather stripping I'd installed last winter to keep the heat in. That's when I heard her voice coming from the kitchen, bright and animated in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Victoria, my wife of 16 years, sat at the kitchen island with her back to the mudroom entrance. Her phone lay flat on the marble surface, the screen glowing. Speakerphone. She was laughing at something, the kind of laugh that comes from your belly, the one she used to give me when we were dating and I'd tell stories about my apprenticeship disasters. Then I heard the other voice. Male. Smooth. The kind of voice that sells luxury cars or investment portfolios. I didn't recognize it at first, but the tone was intimate. Familiar. The way people sound when they've shared secrets and skin. I should have announced myself. Cleared my throat. Made my presence known like a decent person would. Instead, I stood frozen in the doorway between the mudroom and kitchen, my hand still on the knob, watching my wife's shoulders shake with laughter at words I couldn't quite hear. The man on the phone said something that made her giggle. Actually giggle. Victoria hadn't giggled since our daughter Emma was born 13 years ago. She'd become serious after that. Focused. Driven. She ran a successful real estate business, selling homes in the Pearl District in West Hills to people with more money than I'd see in a lifetime. I was proud of her. I told everyone my wife was brilliant, ambitious, unstoppable. Her voice came clear as the September light streaming through the windows. Oh, Marcus won't notice. He's always too busy staring at rocks to pay attention to anything else. Trust me, he's completely oblivious. The man laughed. A low, knowing sound. You're terrible. I love it. She shifted on the stool, her silk blouse catching the light. The blouse I'd watched her deliberate over for 20 minutes last week. The one she said was for a client meeting. I'm serious, she continued, her voice dropping into conspiracy. He thinks I'm at yoga 3 nights a week. The man actually believes I'm doing downward dog at 7 p.m. when I'm with you. My husband's stupid. He'll never figure it out. The words landed like a sledgehammer to the chest. Not the infidelity, though that was there too, heavy and certain. But the contempt. The casual cruelty. The way she said my name like it was a punchline to a joke I wasn't in on. Stonemasons know about weight. We lift it, Move it, set it into place. This weight was different. It pressed from the inside out. I must have made a sound. A breath. A shift of my boot on the tile. Something that broke the spell of her private world. Victoria turned on the stool, phone still glowing on the counter, and her face went through a series of changes I watched like time-lapse photography. Amusement to confusion to recognition to absolute terror. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her makeup stark against pale skin. The voice on the phone kept talking, oblivious. "Babe, you still there? When are we meeting Tuesday? I've got that hotel room booked, the one you liked with the view of the river." I walked into the kitchen slowly, deliberately, the way you approach a structure that might collapse. My eyes never left Victoria's face. She reached for the phone but her hands were shaking so badly she knocked it across the marble. It skittered toward me. I caught it before it hit the floor. The screen showed a contact name. Derek Chen. I knew that name. He was one of her clients. No, not just a client. Her biggest client. The tech entrepreneur who'd bought and sold 4 properties through her in the last 2 years. The one she talked about at dinner, praising his business acumen and his eye for design. The one whose holiday party we'd attended last December where he'd shaken my hand and complimented the stonework in his new kitchen that I hadn't done. "Hello Derek," I said into the phone, my voice surprisingly steady. "This is the stupid husband. We need to talk." The line went dead immediately. The silence that followed had texture. I could feel it pressing against my eardrums. Victoria slid off the stool and stood there, trapped between the island and the wall of windows that overlooked the backyard I'd terraced with retaining walls 3 summers ago. Her mouth worked but nothing coherent emerged. Just fragments. "Marcus, wait, let me, it's not, you don't understand." I set the phone down on the marble with the care I'd used setting a keystone. The counter was cold under my palm. I'd chosen this slab myself from a quarry in Vermont. Driven there on a weekend to pick the perfect piece for her dream kitchen. Waited 3 months for it to arrive. Installed it over a 4-day span, making sure every seam was invisible, every edge perfectly smooth. I'd cut my hand on a grinding wheel during the install. The scar still showed white across my knuckles. "How long?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like my father's voice, the one he used when he was past anger and into something colder. Victoria's hands twisted together. Tears started, but they looked wrong. Performative. "Marcus, please. It's not what you think." I picked up her phone again and opened it. She didn't have a passcode, never had. She said it was because she trusted me, because we didn't keep secrets. The messages with Derek Chen scrolled back months. Since June. 4 months of hotel rooms and lunch meetings that ran long in creative excuses. Tuesday yoga was the Sentinel Hotel. Thursday book club was his condo in the Pearl. Sunday morning farmers market visits were breakfast in bed 20 minutes from our house. The photographs were there too. Nothing I wanted to see but couldn't look away from. Champagne glasses and rumpled sheets. His hand on her hip. Her smile, genuine and unguarded in a way she hadn't smiled at me since before Emma started middle school. I scrolled back to June and found the first message. The one where friendly client relationship crossed into something else. Her response had been encouraging. Flirtatious. The texts that followed built a foundation, then walls, then a complete structure. A whole second life assembled in pixels and encrypted messages. Victoria started talking fast, words tumbling over each other. It was a mistake. I was confused. Things between us haven't been good. You're always working. I felt lonely. It didn't mean anything. I love you. We can fix this. Think about Emma. I looked up from the phone. Think about Emma? Our daughter was at school, 7th grade, probably in algebra class right now. The class she struggled with. The one Victoria was too busy to help with because of her real estate career and her yoga and her book club and her affair. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Where is she right now? I asked. Emma. What time does she get home? Victoria blinked, confused by the question. I don't, around 4, I think. The bus. You think? I set the phone down again. Our daughter comes home in less than an hour and you think you know when. That's not fair, Victoria said, her voice rising. You're gone all the time too. You leave before she wakes up. You come home after dinner half the time. Don't act like you're father of the year. She wasn't wrong. Stonemason hours are long. Jobs run over. Suppliers fail. Weather delays. I'd missed school concerts and parent-teacher conferences. I'd eaten reheated dinners alone while they slept. But I'd done it to build something. To provide. To make sure the mortgage cleared and the college fund grew and Victoria could drive the Range Rover she wanted instead of the Honda I suggested. I walked to the cabinet where we kept the whiskey, the good stuff from a distillery tour we'd taken in Scotland for our 15th anniversary. We'd been happy that week. Or I thought we were. Turns out I was stupid. I poured 2 fingers into a rocks glass and drank it standing at the counter. The burn felt appropriate. Victoria watched me with wide eyes. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I said. But I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to pretend I didn't hear what I heard. I'm not going to accept that I'm stupid and oblivious. And I'm not going to let you rewrite history to make this my fault. She opened her mouth to argue but I held up my hand. I need you to stop talking. I need to think. And I need you to be somewhere else when Emma gets home because I'm not ready to explain to our daughter why her mother's a liar. The word hung in the air between us. Liar. It wasn't the worst word I could have used but it was the most accurate. Victoria's face crumpled. She grabbed her purse from the counter, her keys, her phone that I handed back to her without a word. She moved toward the door, then stopped. Marcus, I'm sorry. I really am. I turned my back on her and stared out the window at the yard. The maple tree. The stone path. The terraced garden beds. Sorry doesn't rebuild what you demolished, I said. It just acknowledges the rubble. I heard her shoes on the tile. The side door opening and closing. Her car starting in the driveway. The sound fading down the street. Then silence. The kind that fills a house when you realize you're alone in it for the first time. I poured another whiskey and this time I sat down at the island, in the spot where she'd been sitting when she called me stupid. The marble was cold under my forearms. I could see the faint marks where my tools had shaped it, invisible to most people but clear to me. Nothing is perfect up close. Everything shows its flaws if you look hard enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my foreman, Ray. You coming back to site? Got questions about the hearth install. I typed back. Family emergency. Handle it. You know what to do. Ray had worked with me for 8 years. He didn't ask questions. Just sent back a thumbs up. Emma would be home soon. I needed to decide what to tell her. The truth felt too heavy for a 13-year-old on a Thursday afternoon. A lie felt wrong after what I'd just discovered. I settled on a middle path. Mom had to run an errand. She'll be back later. It wasn't the whole truth but it bought time. I heard the bus hiss to a stop at the corner. The sound of kids laughing and backpacks thudding. Emma's key in the lock. Her voice calling out, bright and unconcerned. Dad? You're home early. I stood up from the island and arranged my face into something that wouldn't scare her. Yeah, honey. Supplier screwed up. Come tell me about your day. She dropped her backpack in the mudroom with a thud and appeared in the kitchen, all long limbs and braces and enthusiasm. We're doing the Pythagorean theorem in math. It's actually pretty cool when you get how it works. I listened to her talk about triangles and squares and proofs, nodding in the right places, asking questions I hoped made sense. She raided the fridge for string cheese and apple slices, completely unaware that her world had shifted on its axis an hour ago. I was grateful for her innocence even as I mourned its inevitable end. "Where's Mom?" she asked eventually, noticing the absence. "Showing a property. She'll be back for dinner." Emma shrugged, already moving toward the stairs. "I've got homework. Shout if you need help with dinner." "I won't," I said, "but thanks." She disappeared upstairs and I heard her bedroom door close. Music started playing, muffled through the floor. I looked around the kitchen, at the custom cabinets and the farmhouse sink and the pot rack I'd mounted myself. This room had been Victoria's dream. I'd made it real. Now it felt like a museum to something that no longer existed. I pulled out my laptop and opened a browser. Typed in divorce attorney Portland, Oregon. The search results filled the screen. Hundreds of options. Reviews and ratings and promises of aggressive representation. I clicked on the first one. Read about consultations and retainer fees and custody arrangements. The language was cold and technical. Petitioner. Respondent. Dissolution of marriage. Legal words for the end of a life. My phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Again I let it pass. The third time I answered. "What?" Her voice was small. "Where should I go? I can't just drive around all night." "Hotel," I said. "You know several apparently." She sucked in a breath. "That's cruel. You called me stupid to your lover while planning your next hotel visit." "I'm being factual, not cruel. Can we please talk about this like adults?" I laughed, surprising myself. Adults don't have affairs and mock their spouses. Adults communicate. Adults show respect. You did none of those things. "I made a mistake," she said again, like repetition would change the shape of it. "No," I said. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is bouncing a check. What you did was a choice. Multiple choices. Hundreds of them. Every text. Every lie. Every time you looked me in the eye and told me you were going to yoga." Silence on her end. "Then, what do you want me to do?" "Stay away tonight. Tomorrow we'll talk. With lawyers probably." "Marcus, please don't do this. Think about Emma." "I am thinking about Emma. I'm thinking about what kind of example we set. I'm thinking about what she learns about trust and respect in marriage. Right now the example you're setting isn't one I want her to follow." I ended the call before she could respond. My hands were shaking. I realized I hadn't eaten since breakfast. The adrenaline that had carried me through the last 2 hours was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. I made a sandwich I didn't want and ate it standing at the counter, tasting nothing. Emma came down at 6 for dinner. I ordered pizza because cooking felt impossible. We ate at the kitchen table, her chattering about school drama and who said what to whom. I made the appropriate sounds and asked the right questions while my mind spun through scenarios. Custody arrangements. Asset division. How to tell our families. How to tell Emma. After she went back upstairs, I sat in the living room in the dark and let myself feel it. The anger first, hot and righteous. Then the humiliation, sticky and shameful. Finally the grief, heavy as wet concrete. 16 years. A house. A daughter. A life I thought was solid. All of it built on a foundation that had been crumbling while I stared at rocks. My father had been a stonemason too. Taught me the trade when I was 15. He'd had a saying he repeated until it became part of my DNA. "Trust the stone, Marcus. It doesn't lie. Wood can rot from the inside. Metal can rust where you can't see. But stone shows its truth. If there's a flaw, it reveals itself." I'd trusted stone my whole life. I should have known better than to trust something as unstable as a human heart. The house settled around me, creaking and sighing. I heard the furnace kick on. Emma's footsteps overhead. The neighbor's dog barking at something in the dark. Normal sounds from a life that was no longer normal. I didn't cry. The tears would come later, I knew. Right now I was still in shock. Still processing. Still trying to understand how I'd missed every sign. I pulled out Victoria's phone again, the one I still had. Scrolled through more messages. Found the planning. The careful choreography of deception. Her telling Derek about my schedule, my habits, my obliviousness. Him making jokes about the stupid husband who worked too much. Her laughing. Always laughing. There were messages about me and Emma too. Complaints I'd never heard to my face. How I was boring. How I never wanted to do anything exciting. How I was content with my small life and small dreams. How she deserved more. Better. Someone who understood ambition. Derek Chin understood ambition. Tech entrepreneur. 2 exits. Portfolio of properties. The kind of man who wore Italian suits and drove a Tesla. The kind of man who could take her to Napa for the weekend without checking the bank balance first. I was none of those things. I was a tradesman who came home with stone dust in my hair and calluses on my hands. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was stupid for thinking that was enough. But then I thought about the marble counters and the flagstone path and the terraced garden. I thought about the college fund I'd built dollar by dollar. I thought about the roof I'd replaced myself to save money and the furnace I maintained every fall so Emma wouldn't be cold. I thought about showing up. Every day. Even when I was tired. Even when the job was hard. That wasn't stupid. That was love. The quiet, unglamorous kind that doesn't photograph well but holds a house together through storms. I made a decision then, sitting in the dark living room of the house I'd maintained for 16 years. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to compete with Derek Chen's money or charm or promises. I wasn't going to twist myself into something I wasn't to win back a woman who'd mocked me to her lover. I was going to do what stonemasons do. Assess the damage. Remove the unstable material. Rebuild on a foundation that could be trusted. Tomorrow I'd call a lawyer. I'd start documentation. I'd figure out custody and assets and all the ugly logistics of dismantling a life. Tonight I'd sit in the dark and let myself feel everything I needed to feel before the real work began. Because stonemasons know something civilians don't. Breaking things is fast. Building them right takes time. And I'd spent 16 years building something that turned out to be unstable. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The next morning came too early and not early enough. I woke on the couch at 5:30, my neck stiff and my mouth tasting like regret. Emma was still asleep upstairs. Victoria hadn't come home. I made coffee in the kitchen that now felt like a crime scene, every surface holding evidence of yesterday's detonation. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Victoria and a string of texts. The early ones were apologetic. The later ones turned defensive. The final one, sent at 2 in the morning, was just sad. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try. Please. I didn't respond. Words felt cheap after what I'd heard. She'd spent months building a vocabulary of lies. I wasn't interested in more language. I was interested in action, in proof, in something solid I could test with my hands and trust with my life. Ray texted at 6. You good? Need to push the timeline on the Wilshire project? I'm good, I lied. Stay on schedule. I'll be there by 8. Work was the only thing that made sense anymore. Stone didn't betray you. A level didn't lie. The tools did what they were designed to do and nothing more. There was peace in that simplicity. Emma came down at 7, sleepy-eyed and reaching for cereal. Where's Mom? Still at that property showing, I said, the lie coming easier this time. She texted she'd be back this afternoon. Must be a big sale, Emma said, unconcerned. She poured milk and scrolled through her phone while eating. Can Zoe come over after school? Sure. I'll be home by 4. She kissed my cheek on her way out the door, backpack bouncing. Love you, Dad. Love you too, honey. The door closed and I was alone with my coffee and my thoughts. I had an hour before I needed to leave for the job site. I used it to start documenting. Screenshots of text messages. Photos of receipts I found in Victoria's car when I checked it in the garage. Credit card statements showing hotel charges and restaurant meals I'd never attended. A calendar of her absences cross-referenced with Derek Chen's social media posts that told a parallel story. My father had taught me to document everything on a job. Photographs before and after. Receipts for materials. Notes about changes and delays. Cover your assets, he'd say. People forget. Paper remembers. I applied that same principle now, building a file that couldn't be argued with or explained away. At 7:45, Victoria's Range Rover pulled into the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as she sat in the driver's seat, gathering courage or crafting strategy. Finally she emerged, looking smaller than usual in yesterday's clothes. Her makeup had migrated overnight into shadows under her eyes. She came through the side door slowly, like she expected me to throw something. I was pouring a second cup of coffee. I didn't offer her one. Emma's at school, I said. You've got until 4 to get whatever you need and find somewhere else to stay. Marcus, please. Can we just talk? We're past talking. You spent months talking to Derek Chen about how stupid I am. I'm done being the punchline. She set her purse on the counter, the one I'd bought her for Christmas last year. I made a terrible mistake. I know that. But throwing away 16 years because of one mistake seems extreme. I turned to face her fully. One mistake is forgetting our anniversary. This was a campaign. Planned. Executed. Sustained. You didn't slip and fall into bed with him. You scheduled it. Multiple times a week. 4 months. She had no answer to that. Her eyes dropped to the floor, to the tile I'd laid myself, grouted on my knees over a long weekend. I want to fight for us, she said quietly. There's no us to fight for. You killed that yesterday when you called me stupid on speakerphone while planning your next hotel visit with your lover. Her face crumpled. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? I want you to leave. Today. Now. Pack a bag. Find a hotel. Figure out your next move. But do it away from here. This is still my house too. She looked up sharply. Our house. My name is on the deed. My labor built half the value. My income paid most of the mortgage while you built your business. So yes, our house. But right now I need you out of it so I can think. She started to argue, then stopped. Something in my face must have convinced her this wasn't negotiable. She went upstairs. I heard drawers opening and closing. The sound of the suitcase wheels on the hardwood. 20 minutes later she came back down with 2 bags in her laptop case. What do I tell Emma? The truth, I said. Eventually. For now. Tell her you're staying with a friend while we work through some issues. She nodded, eyes wet. I really do love you, Marcus. Not enough, I said. Or at least not the way I needed you to. She left without another word. I watched her load the Range Rover, back out of the driveway, and disappear down the street. Then I locked the door and got ready for work, moving through the morning routine with mechanical precision. Boots. Tools. Thermos. Keys. The familiar rituals that held a life together even when everything inside it was falling apart. The Wilshire project was a custom kitchen in a restored Victorian. High-end clients, unlimited budget, imported marble from Italy. The kind of job I loved because it let me practice craft instead of just production. Ray met me at the site with coffee and a look that said he knew something was wrong but wouldn't ask. We spent the morning templating the island, checking measurements against the cabinet drawings, discussing the backsplash installation. The work required focus. Precision. There was no room for distraction when you were handling slabs that cost more than most people's cars. I lost myself in the familiar rhythm. Measure. Mark. Cut. Test. The stone didn't care about my marriage. It just demanded accuracy and respect. At lunch, Ray and I sat on the tailgate of my truck eating sandwiches. He finally broke the silence. "You okay, boss?" "No," I said. "But I will be." He nodded. "Anything I can do?" "Keep the crew moving. I might need to take some time soon to deal with personal stuff." "You got it." He crumpled his sandwich wrapper and stood. "For what it's worth, you're the most solid guy I know. Whatever's happening, you'll figure it out." After he walked away, I sat alone with my coffee and stared at nothing. Solid. That's what people always called me. Reliable Marcus. Steady Marcus. The guy who showed up and did the work and never complained. It was a compliment I'd worn like a badge. Now it felt like an epitaph for a version of myself that no longer existed. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Marcus Webb? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Yes. This is Jennifer Martinez from Chen Enterprises. I'm calling on behalf of Derek Chen. He'd like to speak with you at your earliest convenience to discuss the situation with Victoria." I laughed. Actually laughed. The audacity was almost impressive. "Tell Mr. Chen that I have nothing to discuss with him. Ever. And if he contacts me or my wife again, my lawyer will be in touch." "I think you misunderstand," she started, but I ended the call. Block the number. The corporate approach to a personal disaster. Send the assistant. Keep it clean. Maintain deniability. Derek Chen was a coward hiding behind money and staff. The afternoon passed in a blur of dust and precision. By 4 I was pulling into my driveway, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. Emma's bus arrived 5 minutes later. She bounded off with her usual energy, full of stories about lunch drama and gym class disasters. We made pasta for dinner, working side by side in the kitchen the way we had since she was tall enough to reach the counter. She talked and I listened, grateful for her voice filling the silence. After dinner she retreated to her room for homework and I sat at my laptop, researching divorce attorneys. I found one I liked. Sandra Morrison. 20 years of experience. Straight-talking profile that promised no-nonsense representation. I booked a consultation for Monday morning. Victoria called at 8. I answered on the third ring. "Where are you?" I asked. "A hotel downtown. The Heathman." She paused. "Have you thought about what I said? About trying to fix this?" "I've thought about a lot of things. Mostly about how you systematically deceived me for months while making me feel crazy for sensing something was wrong." "I never called you crazy." "No, just stupid." "To your lover." On speakerphone. In our kitchen. She exhaled slowly. "I don't know how many times I can apologize for that. Apologies don't fix structural damage. They're just words. I need to see the foundation rebuilt. Right now there's nothing to build on. So that's it. We're done. I don't know yet. But I know I can't live with someone who has that much contempt for me. Who could say those things and laugh about it? That's not love. I don't know what it is, but it's not love." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Smaller. "You're right. What I said was unforgivable. I got caught up in something that made me feel exciting and young and I lost sight of everything that mattered." At least that was honest. Maybe the first fully honest thing she'd said in months. "I need time," I told her. "And space. Stay at your hotel. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk about next steps." "What about Emma?" You can see her. But not here. Take her out. And don't bring him up. She doesn't need to know the details yet. Okay. She paused again. Marcus, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know it's true. I believe you're sorry you got caught. I'm not sure you'd be sorry otherwise. That's not fair. Maybe not. But fair went out the window when you started sleeping with your client. I ended the call and sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by stone and wood and carefully crafted beauty that suddenly felt hollow. Tomorrow I'd meet with a lawyer. I'd start the process of dismantling a marriage. Tonight I'd sit with the wreckage and try to imagine what came next. Upstairs, Emma's music played softly. She was safe. Unaware. Still living in the before. I'd protect that innocence as long as I could. But eventually the truth would come out and her world would shift the way mine had. That was the cost of her mother's choices. A daughter who'd learned too young that love wasn't always enough and promises sometimes broke. I poured a whiskey and took it out to the back patio. The September night was cool and clear. Stars scattered overhead like stone chips on black velvet. I'd built this patio 5 years ago, mixing concrete and laying pavers in a herringbone pattern that took 3 weekends to complete. Victoria had picked the furniture. We'd hosted dinners here. Birthday parties. 4th of July barbecues. All those memories now carried a question mark. How much of it had been real? When had she stopped loving me and started resenting me? Had there been a specific moment or had it been erosion, slow and steady like water wearing away granite? I didn't have answers. Maybe I never would. What I had was tomorrow and the day after that. Work to do. A daughter to raise. A life to rebuild from rubble. Stonemasons understand rubble. It's where every project starts. You clear it away. You dig down to something solid. Then you start again, one stone at a time, building something that can weather whatever comes. I finished my whiskey and went inside. Locked the doors. Checked on Emma, asleep with her phone still in her hand. I took it gently and plugged it in, kissed her forehead, and went to my own empty bed. Tomorrow would come whether I was ready or not. The only choice was how I'd meet it. Monday morning arrived with rain hammering the windows and Sandra Morrison's office smelling like old books and fresh coffee. She was exactly what her profile suggested, mid-50s, silver hair pulled back tight, eyes that had seen every variation of human failure and stopped being shocked around case number 200. Her handshake was firm enough to convey competence without trying to prove anything. I'd brought everything. The screenshots printed and organized in a binder. Credit card statements highlighted in yellow. A timeline I'd constructed over the weekend, mapping Victoria's absences against Derek Chen's social media activity. Sandra spread it across her conference table like a general reviewing battle plans. This is thorough, she said, flipping through pages. You do this kind of documentation for work? Stonemasonry. I'm used to proving my work holds up to inspection. She nodded, making notes on a yellow pad. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, which means we don't need to prove adultery to dissolve the marriage. But this documentation will be relevant for custody discussions and potentially spousal support calculations. Tell me about your daughter. I told her about Emma. 13 years old. Honor roll. Soccer team. Still believed her parents were solid. Sandra listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes that I couldn't read upside down. Your wife's income, she asked. Compared to yours. She makes more. Maybe 60% more. Real estate has been good to her the last few years. That complicates spousal support. Oregon looks at several factors including income disparity, length of marriage, and standard of living established during the marriage. Given that she out-earns you and engaged in marital misconduct, we have leverage. But it's not automatic. I don't want her money, I said. I want custody of Emma. And I want to keep the house. Sandra set down her pen and looked at me directly. The house has significant equity, I assume. About 400,000. We bought it for $320 12 years ago. I've done most of the improvements myself. Then the house is a major asset that will need to be divided or bought out. If you want to keep it, you'll need to either refinance to buy out her share or trade other assets. Given her income, she might fight for the house too. Let her fight. I built that house into what it is. She can have the investment accounts. The retirement funds. Whatever. But that house is Emma's home and I'm not uprooting her because her mother couldn't keep a promise. Sandra made more notes. We'll prioritize custody in the house in our negotiations. I'll need a retainer of $5,000 to get started. We'll file a petition for dissolution, request temporary custody arrangements, and begin discovery. Given the affair in your documentation, I expect we can negotiate favorable terms without going to trial. But be prepared for this to take 6 months minimum. I wrote the check, watched $5,000 disappear into the machinery of divorce, and left her office feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. The process had started. There was no pretending anymore. No going back to the before. Ray called while I was sitting in my truck in the parking garage. The Wilshire clients want to meet about adding a fireplace surround. You available Wednesday? Yeah, I'll be there. What are they thinking? Something dramatic. Maybe that black granite with the gold veining. The stuff we used on the Henderson job. I'll pull samples. We talked logistics for a few more minutes, the familiar territory of work anchoring me back to something that made sense. When I hung up, I sat in the concrete dimness and let myself feel the weight of what I'd just done. Filed for divorce. Started the legal dismantling of 16 years. Turned a marriage into a case number. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Can I see Emma tonight? Take her to dinner? I typed back. 6 o'clock. Back by 8:30. School night. Thank you. I'll pick her up at home. I drove to the job site and lost myself in measurements and angles. The Italian marble had arrived and needed inspection before we could begin installation. I went over every slab with Ray, checking for flaws, verifying the veining matched the client's selections. Stone doesn't lie. A crack is a crack. A flaw reveals itself in the right light. I wished humans came with the same clarity. That evening I told Emma her mother was picking her up for dinner. She looked up from her homework with curiosity but not concern. Cool. Where are we going? You'll have to ask her. I kept my voice light, normal, like this was routine instead of the beginning of a custody arrangement. Victoria arrived at exactly 6, makeup carefully applied to hide whatever she'd been feeling. Emma hugged me goodbye and bounded out to the Range Rover. I watched them drive away and felt the house exhale into emptiness. For 2 hours I had nothing to do but think, and thinking was dangerous territory. I cleaned instead. Scrubbed the kitchen counters that didn't need scrubbing. Organized the garage that was already organized. Checked the furnace filter even though I'd changed it last month. Motion was better than stillness. Work was better than contemplation. Emma returned at 8:25, full of stories about the restaurant and the dessert they'd shared. She seemed happy. Unburdened. I was grateful Victoria had kept the evening light. After Emma went upstairs, my phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. Thank you for letting me see her, she said when I answered. It meant everything. She's your daughter. I'm not keeping you from her. I'm just setting boundaries. I understand. She paused. My lawyer reached out to yours today. I know. Sandra called me. This is really happening then. Did you think it wouldn't? Did you think I'd just forget what I heard and go back to normal? I don't know what I thought. Her voice sounded tired. I guess I hoped you'd want to try counseling or something. Give us a chance to fix it before lawyers got involved. I sat down on the couch, the same spot where I'd spent Friday night in the dark. Counseling works when both people want to repair something broken. What you did wasn't broken. It was betrayal. Systematic. Intentional. Counseling can't fix contempt. I don't have contempt for you, Marcus. You called me stupid. Multiple times. To your lover. While laughing about how easy it was to deceive me. That's the definition of contempt. Silence stretched between us. Finally she spoke. I was wrong. About all of it. The affair. The things I said. The person I became. I don't know how to make you believe me. I don't need to believe you. I just need to get through this process and come out the other side with my daughter and my sanity intact. What about Derek? She asked quietly. Are you going to do something to him? The question surprised me. Like what? Challenge him to a duel? Kia's Tesla? I don't know. Men do things when they're angry. I'm past anger. I'm in the logistics phase now. Derek Chin is your problem, not mine. If you want to keep seeing him, that's your business. Just keep him away from Emma. We're not seeing each other anymore. I ended it after Thursday. Because you got caught or because you realized it was wrong? Another long pause. Both, I think. I ended the call without saying goodbye. The next morning brought more rain and an email from Sandra with a draft of the dissolution petition. I read through the legal language that reduced our marriage to bullet points and asset lists. Petitioner requests. Respondent shall provide. The cold vocabulary of ending. I approved the draft and went to work. The Wilshire fireplace consultation went well. The clients wanted something bold, and I showed them options that would make a statement without overwhelming the space. We settled on black granite with dramatic white veining, a surround that would take 2 weeks to fabricate and another week to install. The kind of project that required precision and patience. Emma's routine became my anchor. Morning breakfast. After-school check-ins. Evening homework help. Soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I showed up for everything, documented everything, built a record of present parenting that Sandra said would matter in custody negotiations. Victoria saw Emma twice a week for dinner and seemed to be following the unspoken rules. No drama. No pressing for information about what I was doing. Just trying to maintain connection with her daughter. 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, Derek Chin made his move. Not directly. He was too smart for that. Instead, I got a visit at the job site from a building inspector I'd never seen before. Young guy, officious, clipboard clutched like a shield. He wanted to see permits for the Wilshire project. Questioned our timeline. Suggested the marble installation might not meet code requirements that didn't exist. Ray pulled me aside while the inspector was measuring something pointless. This is a shakedown. We're completely legal and he knows it. I know. Someone sent him. The Chin guy? Probably. He's got money. Money buys pressure. The inspector found nothing because there was nothing to find. But he promised to return for the fireplace install, to make sure everything was absolutely by the book. After he left, I called Sandra. Can he do this? Use his connections to mess with my business? Technically he's just ensuring code compliance. Proving interference would be difficult. But document everything. Times, dates, specific requests. If there's a pattern of harassment, we can address it. I documented. The inspector returned 3 more times over the next week, each visit eating hours of productivity and client confidence. The Wilshire couple started asking questions. Was there a problem? Were we licensed properly? I reassured them with facts and credentials, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Ray found out the inspector's name was Josh Paulson and he'd been cited twice for accepting gifts from contractors in exchange for favorable inspections. A little digging revealed that Derek Chin had donated $50,000 to a building safety nonprofit that Paulson served on the board of. Not proof of coordination, but a suggestive connection. I called Derek Chin directly. Used the number from Victoria's phone that I'd memorized without meaning to. He answered on the second ring, his voice carrying that smooth confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. "Marcus Webb. I wondered when I'd hear from you directly. Call off your inspector. My business has nothing to do with what happened between you and my wife." He laughed. "Actually, it has everything to do with it. You see, Victoria told me how hard you work. How dedicated you are to your craft. It would be a shame if that dedication was undermined by regulatory scrutiny. This is harassment. This is civic responsibility. I'm simply concerned that Portland's building codes are being properly enforced. You understand concern, don't you? You were certainly concerned when you discovered your wife had moved on to someone better." The insult was designed to provoke. I took a breath, counted to 5 the way I did when a client said something ignorant. "You're a coward hiding behind money and connections. But here's what you don't understand. Stonemasons know how to work around obstacles. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Your inspector can show up every day. He won't find anything because my work is solid. Just like my case against you if this continues. There is no case against me. I've done nothing illegal. Yet. But keep going and my lawyer will find something. Men like you always cut corners somewhere. Always have something you don't want examined too closely. I'm betting you'd rather move on to your next conquest than have me dig into your business practices." Silence on his end. Then, Victoria was right about one thing. You were boring. Predictable. No wonder she needed something more exciting. And yet she's the one begging for a second chance while you're making threats through building inspectors. Who's really winning here? I ended the call before he could respond. My hands were shaking but my voice had stayed level. Small victory. That evening I told Sandra about the conversation. She made notes and promised to send Derek Chen's lawyer a cease and desist letter regarding the inspector harassment. 2 days later, Josh Paulson stopped showing up. Whatever leverage Derek had applied, Sandra's letter had apparently neutralized it. The Wilshire project proceeded without interference. The fireplace surround installation went perfectly, and the clients posted photos on social media that generated 3 new inquiries. Business continued. But the damage had been done in other ways. Victoria's lawyer had responded to our petition with a counteroffer that was aggressive. She wanted 50-50 custody. She wanted to keep the house or force a sale and split the proceeds. She wanted half my business assets including equipment and client lists. Sandra called it a negotiating position, an opening salvo designed to establish her leverage. We countered with our own aggressive terms. Primary custody for me with Victoria getting every other weekend and 1 weeknight. I'd keep the house by refinancing and buying out her share over 5 years. She'd keep her retirement accounts and I'd keep mine. We'd split other marital assets down the middle. Her lawyer rejected our counter. We were headed for mediation, Sandra said. A process where both parties sat in a room with a neutral third party and tried to find middle ground. If mediation failed, we'd go to trial. The thought of sitting across a table from Victoria while discussing custody percentages and asset values made me want to break something. Emma turned 14 in early November. We threw her a party at the house with her soccer team and school friends. Victoria came for the cake and presents, played her role as co-parent with grace, and left without causing a scene. Emma seemed happy, oblivious to the legal battle being waged over her future. I was grateful for her innocence and dreading the moment it would end. The mediation was scheduled for the week before Thanksgiving. 3 hours blocked off in a conference room at a neutral law office. Sandra prepared me with mock negotiations, playing the role of Victoria's lawyer and throwing every argument she expected to face. She was ruthless in preparation, kind in delivery. By the time mediation day arrived, I felt as ready as someone could feel for sitting across from their wife and dividing up a life. Victoria looked smaller in the conference room. Professional clothes, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. Her lawyer was a man named Thomas Berkshire, late 40s, expensive suit, the kind of shark that real estate money could afford. The mediator was a woman named Carol Wu, mid-60s, grandmother energy, steel underneath. Carol laid out the ground rules. Respectful communication. Focus on solutions. Remember that the goal was Emma's well-being, not winning. Everyone nodded. Then we began the brutal work of negotiation. Custody came first. Thomas argued that Victoria was an excellent mother who'd been primary caregiver for Emma's early years. That her work schedule was flexible. That Emma needed her mother during teenage years. Sandra countered with my documentation of the last 2 months. School pickups. Homework help. Soccer practices. Dinner preparation. The steady presence that Emma had come to rely on. Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice quiet. I made mistakes in my marriage. But I've never stopped being Emma's mother. She needs both of us. She does, I agreed. But she needs stability more than she needs equal time. Right now I provide that stability. You're still figuring out who you are after blowing up our family. That's not fair, Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. We went back and forth for an hour. Finally Carol suggested a compromise. I'd have primary physical custody during the school year. Victoria would have every other weekend, alternating holidays, and extended time during summer break. We'd share legal custody, meaning major decisions about school and health would be joint. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it protected Emma's routine. Victoria looked at Thomas. He nodded. She agreed. The house discussion was harder. Victoria wanted it. Argued that she'd chosen it, designed the kitchen, made it a home. Thomas threw numbers around. Fair market value. Equity splits. Refinancing challenges. Sandra countered that I'd done most of the improvements that generated the equity. That my business was home-based and losing the house meant losing my workshop. That forcing a sale would be cruel and unnecessary. I can buy you out, I said directly to Victoria. 5-year payment plan. Market value split. You get your equity plus 3% annual interest. I keep the house and Emma stays in her school district. Where would I go? Victoria asked. That's not my problem to solve. You created this situation. You figure out your next chapter. But Emma's chapter continues in the house she's known her whole life. Thomas started to object, but Carol held up her hand. Let's take a break. 15 minutes. In the hallway, Sandra told me I was doing well. Stay calm. Stay focused on Emma. Don't let emotion drive decisions. Victoria approached me alone while the lawyers talked at the coffee station. Can we talk? Just us? I followed her to a quiet corner. She looked exhausted. I'm not trying to hurt you, she said. I know you don't believe that. But this house thing. It's hard. That house was supposed to be our forever home. It still can be Emma's forever home. Just not yours. You're really not going to forgive me, are you? I don't know yet. Right now I'm focused on getting through this process. Forgiveness is a luxury I can't afford. She nodded. Slowly. For what it's worth, I miss you. Miss us. The way we used to be. We can't go back to the way we used to be. That version died when you called me stupid on speakerphone. We can only go forward. And forward means separate lives. Tears started, but she blinked them back. Okay. I'll agree to the house terms. But I want Christmas with Emma this year. You can have Christmas Eve. I get Christmas Day. Deal. We went back into the conference room and finished the negotiation. Asset division was straightforward once the house was settled. She kept her business and I kept mine. We split savings accounts and agreed to hold retirement funds separately. By the time Carol declared the mediation successful, 3 hours had become 4 and I felt hollowed out. Sandra walked me to my truck. You did good in there. The settlement is fair and protects what matters most. When does it become final? We'll draft the agreement based on today's terms. Both parties sign. Judge approves. Probably February if everything goes smoothly. 6 more weeks of limbo. 6 more weeks of married but not. The rain had started again, turning the parking lot into a mirror. I drove home slowly, processing what had just happened. I'd negotiated the end of my marriage like it was a construction contract. Terms and conditions. Payment schedules. Deliverables. It felt wrong and necessary at the same time. Emma was at soccer practice. I had 2 hours before pickup. I went to my workshop in the garage and stood among my tools. The familiar smell of stone dust and machine oil. The weight of hammers and chisels hung on their proper hooks. This space had been my sanctuary for years. Now it felt like a bunker. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the mediation went well. Congratulations on destroying Victoria over one mistake. I stared at the message. Derek Chen had somehow gotten updates about our private mediation. Either from Victoria directly or through some other channel. The violation made my jaw clench. I blocked the number without responding. Whatever game he was playing, I wouldn't engage. But the message nagged at me. One mistake. That's how he framed it. How Victoria probably framed it. Like infidelity was a stumble instead of a choice made hundreds of times over 4 months. Like contempt was an accident instead of a revelation of true feelings held and hidden. I picked up a hammer, felt its weight, set it back down. Violence wouldn't solve anything. Anger wouldn't change the past. All I could do was keep building the future one day at a time. Go get Emma from practice. Make dinner. Help with homework. Show up. Be present. Prove through action what words couldn't capture. That night Emma asked if her mom and I were getting divorced. The question came during dinner, casual as asking about the weather. I set down my fork and looked at her directly. Yes, honey. We are. Because of the fighting? Because we can't make the marriage work anymore. Sometimes adults make decisions that hurt people they love. Your mom and I both made mistakes. Now we're trying to figure out what comes next. Will I have to choose between you? No. You'll have both of us. Just in different houses. I'll be here. She'll be somewhere else. You'll spend time with both of us. Emma pushed pasta around her plate. Zoe's parents got divorced last year. She said it was horrible at first, but then it got normal. Normal might take a while. But we'll get there. Do you hate Mom? The question landed hard. I thought about it carefully before answering. No. I'm hurt and angry about what happened. But hate is a strong word. She's still your mother. I'll always respect that. Emma nodded, processing. Okay. We finished dinner in silence. Later, after she went to bed, I sat on the back patio despite the cold. The stone I'd laid 5 years ago was holding up perfectly. No cracks. No shifting. Solid work that would last decades. I wished I could say the same about my marriage. Thanksgiving came and went. Emma spent the morning with me and the afternoon with Victoria. I volunteered at a community dinner, serving food to people whose problems made mine look manageable. The work felt good. Useful. A reminder that life existed beyond my personal drama. December brought the first snow. Emma made the honor roll again. My business landed 2 major projects for spring. Victoria moved into a condo in the Pearl District, one of Derek Chen's properties I learned later. Whether she was still seeing him wasn't my concern. I focused on my lane. Work. Emma. Rebuilding. The divorce papers arrived 2 days before Christmas. Sandra had prepared them based on our mediation agreement. All the terms we'd negotiated laid out in legal language. I read through them once, signed in 4 places, and mailed them back. Victoria had already signed. Now we waited for a judge to make it official. Christmas Eve with Emma was quiet. We made cookies and watched movies and avoided talking about the fact that tomorrow she'd wake up in her mother's condo instead of this house. She hugged me extra long when Victoria picked her up, and I stood in the driveway until the taillights disappeared. Christmas Day I worked in my shop, refinishing a project table that didn't need refinishing. Motion over stillness. Purpose over emptiness. Emma called at noon, said she missed me, promised to be home tomorrow. I told her I loved her and meant it with every particle of my being. The new year arrived without ceremony. January in Portland was gray and wet, the kind of weather that makes you wonder if the sun was just a rumor. I started a kitchen remodel in Lake Oswego, a project that would take 3 months and require complete focus. The client was demanding but fair. The work was challenging in the way I needed. Victoria and I developed a rhythm. Custody exchanges happened in silence. Communication was text only, brief and factual. She seemed to be rebuilding her own life, though I didn't ask for details. We existed in parallel, connected only by Emma. The final decree came on February 14th. Valentine's Day divorce finalization felt like the universe had a sense of humor. Sandra called to confirm the judge had signed. We were officially dissolved. I thanked her for her work, paid the final invoice, and sat with the news for a long moment. 16 years reduced to a stamp on legal paper. I should have felt something dramatic. Relief or grief or anger. Instead I felt tired. The kind of tired that comes after a long job finally finished. Pride in surviving mixed with sadness about what had been lost. Emma took the news quietly. She'd known it was coming. I promised her nothing fundamental would change in her daily life. Same house. Same school. Same dad showing up for every practice and recital and ordinary moment. She nodded and went back to her homework, already adjusting to a new normal. That night I burned the last of the documentation I'd kept. The printed screenshots and highlighted statements. The timeline I'd built. The evidence that had been necessary for legal proceedings but served no purpose now. I kept only the official decree and the custody agreement. Everything else turned to ash in my shop stove. Standing there watching paper curl and blacken, I thought about the version of myself who'd stood in that kitchen doorway last September and heard his wife call him stupid. That man had been broken by betrayal. This man was something different. Scarred but standing. Changed but functional. Ready to build whatever came next on a foundation that couldn't be shaken by someone else's choices. The fire burned down to embers. I locked up the shop and went inside to an empty house that somehow felt less empty than it had months ago. Emma would be back tomorrow. We'd have breakfast. Talk about her history project. Drive to soccer practice. Normal life constructed from the debris of the old life. I poured a small whiskey and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard I'd terraced years ago. The stone walls held. The work endured. Tomorrow I'd start on new projects. But tonight I'd stand here and acknowledge what had ended and what had survived. The marble counters Victoria had dreamed of still gleamed in the dim light. I'd built her dream and she'd broken her promises on top of it. But the stone remained. Solid. True. A reminder that some things last and some things don't, and wisdom is knowing the difference. Spring arrived in Portland with cherry blossoms and unexpected warmth. The Lake Oswego kitchen project wrapped up in early March, and the clients referred me to 3 of their neighbors. Word of mouth had always been my best marketing, and apparently surviving a public divorce hadn't damaged my reputation. If anything, people seemed to respect the quiet way I'd handled it. Emma turned more toward me as the months passed. Not dramatically, but in small ways that accumulated into trust. She asked my opinion about friends and school drama. Showed me her art projects before anyone else saw them. Started cooking with me on weekends, learning the same patience with ingredients that I practiced with stone. We developed our own rhythm, just the 2 of us, and it worked. Victoria remained cordial but distant during custody exchanges. I heard through mutual friends that her relationship with Derek Chin had ended badly. Something about him moving to San Francisco for a business opportunity and not inviting her along. I felt no satisfaction in that news. Just a distant acknowledgement that some people learn consequences slowly. In April, I hired an apprentice. A kid named Miguel, 22, hungry to learn the trade the old way. He reminded me of myself at that age, all raw enthusiasm and willingness to work until his hands bled. Teaching him brought unexpected joy. Passing on knowledge my father had given me. Watching someone else discover the honesty of stone. The house felt different as seasons changed. Less like a museum of failed marriage and more like just a house. Emma's space. My workspace. A shelter that served its purpose without carrying the weight of broken promises. I repainted her room the color she wanted. Built her a window seat for reading. Small projects that made the place feel like it was moving forward instead of stuck in the past. One Saturday in May, I took Emma hiking in the Columbia River Gorge. She'd been stressed about finals and needed to get out of her head. We climbed to Multnomah Falls, stood in the mist, and she asked me the question I had been waiting for since September. Do you think you'll ever get married again? I don't know, honey. Right now I'm focused on being your dad and doing good work. The rest will figure itself out. Mom's dating someone new. Some guy from her yoga class. How do you feel about that? She shrugged. Weird. But also kind of whatever. She seems happier than she was before. That's good. People deserve to be happy. Even when they've made mistakes. Emma looked at me with those eyes that saw more than I gave her credit for. You're not mad anymore, are you? No. Anger takes too much energy. I'd rather use that energy building things. She smiled and we continued up the trail. Later, driving home with the windows down and music playing, I realized I'd told her the truth. The anger had burned itself out somewhere between the divorce decree and the first cherry blossoms. What remained was something quieter. Acceptance maybe. Or just exhaustion from carrying weight that didn't serve any purpose. Summer brought new projects and old patterns. Emma spent 2 weeks with Victoria in July, traveling to California to visit Victoria's sister. I used the time to refinish the deck and take on a challenging project involving reclaimed barn stone for a fireplace in West Lynn. The work absorbed me completely, requiring creativity and precision in equal measure. Miguel proved himself capable and curious. He asked good questions and listened to answers. By August I was trusting him with important cuts and beginning to see the day when he might run his own jobs. That progression felt right. The trade continuing through younger hands. Knowledge preserved and passed forward. Emma came back from California taller somehow, more grown up. She talked about her trip with enthusiasm but seemed glad to be home. We fell back into our routine. Morning coffee while she ate breakfast. Afternoon pickups from soccer. Evening meals where we actually talked instead of just coexisting. The life we'd built from the wreckage of the old life felt solid in a way the old life never had. On a warm evening in late August, I sat on the back patio with a beer and my phone. Emma was at a friend's house for a sleepover. The yard was quiet except for crickets and the neighbors' wind chimes. I scrolled through social media without purpose and stumbled across Victoria's profile. She'd posted a photo from earlier that day. Her and some athletic-looking guy at a trail race, both wearing finisher medals and genuine smiles. The caption read, "New adventures with people who see you. Grateful for second chapters." I stared at that caption longer than I should have. People who see you. The implication was clear. I hadn't seen her. Hadn't valued her. The narrative of our divorce in her mind had transformed from her betrayal into my failure to appreciate her. It was revisionist history, but I understood the psychology. People need to make themselves the hero of their own story, even when the facts suggest otherwise. I could have commented. Could have corrected the record. Could have reminded her and everyone who read that caption about speakerphone confessions and 4 months of deception. Instead, I closed the app and set my phone face down on the stone table I'd built from scraps 5 years ago. Some arguments aren't worth having. Some narratives aren't worth correcting. Victoria needed to believe a version of events that let her sleep at night. I needed to focus on the reality in front of me, a daughter who trusted me, a business that was growing, a life that worked. The beer was cold and the evening was perfect. I leaned back in the chair and watched the sky turn from blue to purple to black. Stars emerged one by one, patient and inevitable. The Japanese maple had fully leafed out, providing shade that would turn brilliant red come fall. The cycle continuing regardless of human drama. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Having fun. Movie night with Zoe. Love you, Dad. I typed back. Love you too, honey. Home by noon tomorrow. That exchange, simple and ordinary, held more truth than any social media narrative. Emma knew who showed up. Who stayed. Who built the foundation she could count on. That knowledge mattered more than any public perception or revised history. September arrived with cooler nights and a new school year. Emma started high school, a transition that made me feel ancient and proud in equal measure. She joined the debate team and continued soccer. Her schedule became complicated, but we managed it together, coordinating rides and practices and games with the precision I brought to project timelines. Victoria and I achieved something like functional co-parenting. We communicated about Emma's needs without bringing up the past. Attended parent-teacher conferences at different times. Split holidays according to the decree. It wasn't friendship, but it was functional, and functional was enough. On a crisp October morning, almost exactly a year after the speakerphone revelation, I drove past the house where I'd been installing that Calacatta marble when everything changed. The clients had since moved, selling to a tech couple with more money than taste. The new owners had painted over the careful neutral palette, added modern furniture that clashed with the bones of the house, and generally erased the thoughtful design that had been there. I felt no attachment to it. The house was just a structure now. The memories it held had been processed and filed away. I drove onto a new job site in Laurelhurst, where a young couple wanted help designing an outdoor kitchen with a pizza oven and granite countertops. They were newly married, full of plans and dreams, touching each other constantly in that way newlyweds do. I gave them good advice about materials and maintenance. Warned them about common mistakes. Built them something that would last longer than most marriages. They thanked me profusely and paid promptly. I wished them well and meant it, even knowing the odds. That evening, Emma and I made dinner together. She told me about debate practice and a boy who might like her, but she wasn't sure. I listened and asked questions and tried to remember what it felt like to be 14 and navigating those waters. We laughed about something ridiculous and ate pasta at the kitchen island I'd installed a lifetime ago. After she went to bed, I stood in that kitchen alone and realized something had shifted. The marble counters didn't hurt anymore. They were just counters. Beautiful and functional and no longer weighted with betrayal. The house had become neutral again. A place to live instead of a crime scene. I poured water from the tap, drank it standing at the sink, and looked out at the dark backyard. The stone walls I'd built were invisible in the darkness, but I knew they were there. Holding the earth. Doing their job. Lasting. A year ago I'd stood in a different spot in this kitchen and heard my wife call me stupid. That moment had detonated my life. But standing here now, I realized it had also revealed the truth. Not just about her contempt, but about my own strength. About what I could survive and rebuild. About the difference between being broken and being changed. The stone walls held. The work endured. Emma was thriving. My business was strong. I was learning to sleep through the night again without the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. These were victories measured in small increments, but they were real. I turned off the kitchen light and headed upstairs. Tomorrow would bring new projects and old routines. Emma's soccer game in the afternoon. A client consultation in the morning. The ordinary construction of a life that worked. Not the life I'd planned 16 years ago when I married Victoria with hopes and promises. But a life nonetheless. Solid. True. Built on a foundation that couldn't be shaken by someone else's choices. In the morning, sunlight would fill this house the way it always had. Emma would come down for breakfast. We'd talk about her day and I'd drive her to school before heading to the job site. The pattern would continue, day after day, building something larger than any single betrayal could diminish. That was the real story. Not the dramatic discovery or the legal battles or the final decree. But this. The quiet persistence of showing up. The steady accumulation of ordinary moments that create a life. The understanding that you can't control what others do, only how you respond. And the response I'd chosen was simple: keep building. Some structures fall. Some foundations crack. But a man who knows his trade can assess the damage, clear the rubble, and start again. One stone at a time. One day at a time. Until what's built is stronger than what was lost. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.